How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Gimel, Daf 3 of Masechta Sanhedrin. Where are we? Okay. Yeah. All right. What's this? Okay. Yeah. Interesting Daf. Yeah. Why not? Okay. Yeah. Why not? It's an interesting Daf. Why not? Yeah, we're going to continue discussing the Mishnah, and then we are going to talk about kind of the source of three judges. Interesting stuff. Okay, so we're going to start in Daf Gimel Amud Aleph. We already did a whole bunch of the Daf yesterday, so we're going to start in Daf Gimel Amud Aleph about 2/3, maybe even 3/4. It's probably somewhere in between there of the way in and Daf Gimel Amud Aleph. About, I'd say, around 10 lines from the bottom of Gimel Amud Aleph at the two dots. Nezek v'chatzi nezek v'chulei. So the Mishnah had said that nezek payments, right, damage payments and half damage payments, right? Of course, if a shor muad damages, so then that's full nezek payments. If a shor tam damages, then it is only half damage payments, as we know from Masechta Bava Kama. So the court that would court those things would be a court of 3. Okay. Nezek hanu chavalos, or frekti gemara, but nezek is betzim chavalos. If you remember from Perek HaChovel in Masechta Bava Kama, so there's 5 payments. There's nezek, tsar, shevis, ripuy, and boshes. So nezek is one of the 5 chavalos. So why, if we already said gezelos v'chavalos is with 3, so memele nezek, which is one of the chavalos, is with 3. So why do we have to say that nezek is with 3? We already know that chavalos is with 3, and nezek is chavalos, or nezek hanu chavalos mishum dekabel misnei chatzi nezek taninami nezek shalim. Well, in a chinami, because the Mishnah had to say chatzi nezek, so once already you got to say chatzi nezek. Okay, so we threw in nezek as well, but the real reason why nezek is there is really because it had to write chatzi nezek. But frekti gemara chatzi nezek nami anu chavalos. But if nezek is considered chavalos, so then half nezek is half chavalos. It would also be included in the umbrella of chavalos. So tanim avon v'katani knasos. So the Gemara says, well, not yes and no. Technically speaking, they're different. Nezek is mammon, is damage, right? You damage, so you pay for what you damaged. That's mammon. Whereas chatzi nezek, half damages, is a knas. It's a fine. Because the logic for saying that half damages are a fine is that, well, a shor tam is a tame animal. It would be very out of its nature, it would be exceptional for a shor tam to damage, and therefore, if a shor tam does damage, malasa kilu, you had no reason to expect that was going to happen, and therefore you had no reason to be on your guard. So really, you shouldn't have to pay anything. But so that you'll kind of keep an extra eye out and be extra careful, we say, you know what, if your shor tam damages, so you will have to pay half damages, and that's a fine. It's a knas. It's a fine, because really, mikra din, you should be off the hook, because it was completely out of left field that your shor tam damaged. So you should be off the hook. But we say, just to keep an extra eye, we're going to fine you half of the damages. So it's a knas. So therefore, nezek is mammon, chatzi nezek is a knas, and therefore, so we teach them separately. So yes, we say chavalos, and then we say chavalos includes nezek. But we have to say chatzi nezek. Why do we have to say chatzi nezek? Because it's a different kind of a nature to nezek. Nezek is mammon, whereas chatzi nezek is knas. So we mention both of them. And I guess once we mention chatzi nezek, so we also mention nezek. Fine. So we mentioned both things. Tana mamona v'katani knasa. But frekti gemara nichal man the armor palgan is knasa. But it's there's machlokes in Masechta Bava Kama. We learned about this machlokes in Masechta Bava Kama. Is in fact chatzi nezek a knas? Maybe it's taka mamun. Maybe fakert. Maybe, of course, you had to guard your shor tam. You have to make sure it's not going to cause any damage. So if your shor tam damages, of course you have to pay. Not just half, but full. However, if it's sort of a first-time offender or even second or third-time offender, if it's still a short time, so then, because it's just a short time, you only have to pay chatzi nezek. We don't require you yet to pay full damages. So, according to that perspective, it's mamun. So, in which case, nezek is mamun, chatzi nezek is mamun. So, if we say that nezek is already chavalos, and so therefore nezek should be included already in chavalos, chatzi nezek should also be included in chavalos. They're both mamun according to that opinion. So, why have nezek and chatzi nezek? So again, anicha, where are we? Lemanda omar palkin is knas. If you say chatzi nezek is a knas, okay, so nezek is mamun, chatzi nezek is knas. We say both of them. Fine. Lemanda omar palkin is mamona. But if you say that chatzi nezek is also mamun, so nezek is mamun, chatzi nezek is mamun, they should just be included in chavalos. Why do I need to list them? Michael and Meimar. How come we have them? So Ella, I did the kaboy lemisna tashnumi kefil, tashnumi abava chamisha. But so the Gemara says enachinami, but we say nezek chatzi nezek tashlume kefel v'tashlume abava chamisha. So kefel and abava chamisha, double payments, and those are definitely knases. So we have to mention that with that kefel abava chamisha are also judged with 3, and those are irregular amounts, right? Meaning the moment sheinu mishtalim biroshu, that it's money that is not sort of the mishtalim birosh means sort of the principal amount. The principal amount is that you pay for what you damaged, but kefels you pay twice for what you damaged, or Aviv Chamisha 4 or 5 times what you damaged, right? So since it's mentioning these irregular payments, kefel Aviv Chamisha, so therefore Tananami Chatzi Nezek Demamchin Mishtalim Biroshu. So we also mention Chatzi Nezek, which is not a principal amount; it's the half amount. And then V'aydik lemisna Chatzi Nezek Tananami Nezek. And once already you have Chatzi Nezek, so you say Nezek Shalom as well, and you have the whole thing. Nezek Chatzi Nezek Kefel Aviv Chamisha. Fine. So because we had to mention Kefel and Dalvei, so we also mentioned Chatzi Nezek, and because of that we also mentioned Nezek Shalom. Azoy. Shloshim and Olam. In fact, the Gemara, how do we know of 3 judges? So this kind of touches on what we saw already yesterday with the Elohim 3 times in the context of Gezela, of Shlichus Yad. So now we're going to see Takat's Machlokes between Yosha and Rabbi Yonasan about how exactly we learn it out from the Pesukim. So, Shloshim and Olam. How do we know that we require 3 judges? To Tanurban, as we learn in the Brayso, V'nikra balabayis el ha'elohim, that harikan echod. Ado Elohim yovedu hashneim harikan shnayim asher yeshun Elohim harikan shlosha de Rabbi Yosha. That's Rabbi Yosha's opinion. Rabbi Yonasan Omer Rishon Tchilin Emor Vendoshn Tchilos. El Ado Elohim yovedu hashneim harikan echod asher yeshun Elohim harikan shnayim vein bezin shokum osifin alein od echod harikan shlosha. Okay. Chevra, this is Shmos Perek Chav Beis Psukim Zayin and Ches. I will read the Psukim. The Psukim are Im lo yimotze aganef v'nikra balabais Elohim im lo sholach yodo b'mleches re'eu. So in that first pasuk Zayin, it says Elohim once. And then next pasuk Al kol dvar pesha Al shor Al chomer Al seh Al samo Al kol aveda sheyomar kiuzeh adho Elohim. That's number 2. Yovad vashneim asher yeshun Elohim. Number 3. Yishalem shnaim l're'eu. So according to Rabbi Yosha, and we'll read it again inside in a second, but according to Rabbi Yosha, it says Elohim 3 times. The 3 Elohims correspond to the requirement for 3 judges. Rabbi Yonasan argues, he says, look, the first mention of Elohim is needed to simply say that we go to Bezdin. Okay, so it's not included in the tally. Okay, the first one we need to actually learn from, not just to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? To just count them up. No, the first one actually we need to say that you go to Bezdin. But the second appearance of Elohim and the third appearance of Elohim, those already can be sort of tallied up. And so if we can't learn out from the first one, because we need that one to simply teach that you go to Bezdin, so there's 2 more remaining. So we learn out from those 2, the second and third mentioning of Elohim, 2 judges. And of course, you can't have an even Bezdin, so you have to add another one, and that's how you get to 3. So let's read it again inside. The Tana Rabbanan learned by V'nikra balabayis Elohim harikan echad. That's 1 judge. Ad Elohim yavad vashneim harikan shnayim. That's the 2nd judge. Asher yishun Elohim harikan shlosha. That's the 3rd judge. Div Rabbi Yosha. That is the opinion of Rabbi Yonasan Omer says, Rabbi Yonasan, Rishon Tchila Nemar. No, the first mention of Elohim is the first one. Vein Darshan Tchilas. And you can't learn out sort of tallies from the first one, because we need the first one to teach simply that you go to Beis Din. So that one we actually have to learn something from. The others you can count up. So rather, from the second and third ones, we learn 2 judges. And since you can't have an even Beis Din, you add another one, and now you have an odd number. You have 3, and there you go. There's your Beis Din of 3. So let's say that the machloikes between Rabbi Yoshe and Rabbi Yonasan is, can you expound the first mention to be included in the tally? That Rabbi Yoshe would say, sure, you can include the first one in the tally. Whereas Rabbi Yonasan says you cannot include the first one in the tally. You can only tally up the second 2. Lo nit. D'chule alma ein darshan tchilos. Rabbi Yoshe also agrees, ein darshan tchilos. That we technically speaking would need to use the first one to learn something from, and can't include it in the tally. However, Rabbi Yoshe would respond and say that if the first Elohim were to be excluded from the tally, the pasuk could have said that the mafkid goes to the judge, to the shofet, and then we would say, okay, so from there we learn out that it goes to that he goes to the judge, that he goes to Beis Din. My Elohim, why did the pasuk go out of its way to say a very specific word? It specifically uses Elohim when it could have just said shofet, shmaminu l'minyana, to say specifically include it in the tally. If it was just to teach us that it goes to Beis Din, it could have said shofet, but it didn't say shofet. It said Elohim to indicate that it should be included in the tally, and therefore there are 3 Elohims for the 3 judges. Whereas Rabbi Yonasan would disagree and say, Lishna da almanakat kedami inshe man de is le dina likarv legabe dayana. Whereas Rabbi Yonasan would disagree and say, no, the Elohim is just a normal word that people would use to indicate that we have to go to judges, we have to go to Beis Din, to a judge. They would say Elohim, and therefore it's a perfectly normal word, and therefore ein darshan tchilos. We have to learn from that you go to Beis Din. It cannot be included in the tally, and only the remaining 2 are in the tally. And then says Rabbi Yonasan, because of ein Beis Din shakel, we add a third. But now, for the Gemara, Rabbi Yoshia leisle Beis Din note. So does Rabbi Yoshia not hold that you need a Beis Din that is capable of a majority? Meaning, according to Rabbi Yoshia, how do we learn out 3 judges? Well, it says Elohim 3 times. He doesn't have to utilize the concept of Beis Din note, of requiring a Beis Din that would always have a majority, meaning that cannot be split even. According to Rabbi Yoshia, it has 3 times. I mean, I guess I can imagine that if the pasuk only said 2 times, so you would say 2 judges. Kilu, according to Rabbi Yoshia, the fact that there's 3 judges is purely because it says Elohim 3 times. Whereas Rabbi Yonasan says, well, you can only learn out 2 of them, but because we have this concept of ein Beis Din shakel, that you need a Beis Din note, so if we add another one. So Rabbi Yonasan makes it clear that he holds of Beis Din note. Does Rabbi Yoshia not hold of Beis Din note, that you need a Beis Din with an odd number, so that there will always be, that it will never be split in half? But we learn how can Rabbi Yoshia not hold of Beis Din note? But we learn in a brisa. Rabbi Eliezer ben Rabbi Yossi Haglili Omer says, Rabbi Eliezer ben Rabbi Yossi Haglili, Mata amud lo omar lintos acharabim lahatos. What does the pasuk mean when it says that we go based on the majority? HaTorah Omra aseh l'cha Beis Din note. Make for yourselves a Beis Din that can never be split evenly, that will always have a majority. So how could Rabbi Yoshia not hold of Beis Din note? first of all, Rabbi Yosha, I believe, is a Tana, so technically I think he can argue, but anyways. So Avalak Rabbi Yehuda, well, Rabbi Yosha holds like Rabbi Yehuda. Dam Shivin. Well, in our Mishnah, right, when we were talking about the how many judges are in the Sanhedrin, so the Tanakam said 71, Rabbi Yehuda says 70. So clearly, Rabbi Yehuda does not hold of Bezdin Noteh, and Rabbi Yosha holds like Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanan is we learned in our Mishnah, Sanhedrin Gedola. How large was the Sanhedrin Gedola? 71 judges. Rabbi Yehuda says 70 judges. So see, Rabbi Yehuda does not hold of Bezdin Noteh, neither does Rabbi Yosha. One second. I'll argue that Rabbi Yehuda says that you can have an even number, that you can have 70 judges by the Sanhedrin, because the pasuk says Esfali Shiv Mish. Miziknei Yisrael, I believe, is the pasuk. Miziknei Yisrael, yeah. So it says Esfali Shiv Mish. Gather for me 70. Because the pasuk specifically says 70, that's why Rabbi Yehuda says 70. However, b'shar beidina, but by other bezdins where the Torah doesn't specifically tell you how many, mishamasle, do we know that Rabbi Yehuda would not hold of bezdin noteh? Meaning, we want to argue that, okay, so by the Sanhedrin Gedola, where the pasuk specifically says 70, so Rabbi Yehuda says 70. But by this bezdin, a bezdin of 3, maybe Rabbi Yehuda would hold of bezdin noteh. V'chitema loshna. And if you're going to argue, no, globally, Rabbi Yehuda does not hold of Bezdin Noteh. He says you can have an even Bezdin. But actually we learn in our Mishnah, Smicha Zakein Varifas Egla, that the elders leaning on the head of the Parim Davar Shel Tzibur, or the chopping off of the head of the calf for Egla Arufa. B'shlosha div Reb Shimon, according to Reb Shimon, it's with 3 judges. Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'chamisha. Rabbi Yehuda says 5 judges. V'aminan, and we say, my time Rabbi Yehuda. How come Rabbi Yehuda says 5 judges? Well, v'samchu shnaim ziknei shnaim. Right? It says was by. This is by a Parim Davar Shel Tzibur. It says v'samchu, and it says ziknei. V'samchu is plural. Ziknei is plural. So minimum of plural is 2. Minimum of plural is 2. So 2 and 2. Ve'ein bezdin shakum osifin alei not echad harikanei. So Rabbi Yehuda's rationale for 5, a bezdin of 5, is because there's v'samchu and ziknei. Each of those are plural. So 2 plus 2 is 4, and you can't have an even bezdin, so you have to add another one. So clearly, when Rabbi Yehuda says 70. By Sanhedrin Gedola, it's specifically by Sanhedrin Gedola because the pasuk says specifically 70. But by other Batei Din, Rabbi Yehuda would require Bezdin Noteh. So the Rabbi Yosha adif from the Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yosha is taking it even a step further than Rabbi Yehuda. Dila Rabbi Yehuda b'Sanhedrin Gedola who delays lay, because Rabbi Yehuda does not require Bezdin Noteh by Sanhedrin Gedola, but Habashar Beidina Islay. But by other courts, he would require Bezdin Noteh, as we saw by Parim Davar Shel Tzibur, by Smicha Zakenim and Arifas Egla. Rabbi Yosha b'shar beidina nami leislei. And Rabbi Yosha does not hold a Bezdin Noteh does not require Bezdin Noteh even by other Botei Din. Ve'elo lintos ma'avidlei. So what does Rabbi Yosha do with lintos acharab and lahatos? Rabbi Eliezer ben Rabbi Yossi Aglili had said it means that you have to have a Bezdin Noteh. Rabbi Yosha does not require a Bezdin Noteh. So what does he do with lintos acharab and lahatos? Mukim la b'din nefashos says, by din nefashos you have to have Bezdin Noteh. You have to have 23 judges for Sanhedrin Katana for din nefashos. Ava b'din imam is low, but you don't need a Bezdin Noteh. But that pasuk of Bezdin Noteh does not apply to Dini Mominus. But Elo Hodetnan, but that which we learn in the Mishnah, Shnayim Omim Zaka V'echad Omer Chayiv. If 2 judges say innocent and 1 says guilty, Zakai, so he's innocent. Shnayim Omim Chayiv V'echad Omer Zakai. If 2 say guilty, 1 says innocent, Chayiv, so he's guilty. Name it like Rabbi Yosha. Let's say that that's unlike Rabbi Yosha, because Rabbi Yosha doesn't hold of the concept of lintos acharab lahatos. He does not learn out about majorities. Maybe according to Rabbi Yosha, he would always have to have a unanimous verdict. Right? Lintos achar natos, we go based on the majority. He doesn't seem to hold of the requirement of majority. So if that's the case, so how do we know that according to Rabbi Yoshia, majority wins? How do we know that 2 against 1 works for Rabbi Yoshia? Maybe you'd have to have a unanimous decision. So, I feel the Rabbi Yoshia, no. Rabbi Yoshia would also agree that majority, right, that we go based on the majority, because Ma'asila b'kavachomer mitin nefashis, because he brings it out from a kavachomer from tin nefashis. U'madin nefashis dechamir amar Rachman zil basaruba. Well, din nefashis, which is stringent, we say go based on the majority, right? Because he learned, right? He said lintos acharab lahatos. He said applies to Sanhedrin Katana, right? Applies to din nefashos, then we go based on the majority, right? So then we asked, okay, so if that's the case, then what about din mominus? 2 against 1 wouldn't work for Rabbi Yoshia. So we say, well, if we can go based on the majority to kill somebody, and we don't require a unanimous decision there, well, then certainly by din mominus, just to say you owe somebody money, we can go based on majority. We don't require a unanimous decision there, right? So again, madin nefashos the chamire. If by din nefashos, which is obviously more stringent, we say go based on the majority, we can rely upon the majority. Din mominus l'kol, and certainly then by din mominus we could rely upon the majority, and we would not require a unanimous decision. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught din mominus b'shlosha Rebbe Omer b'chamisha. Oh, so din mominus is with 3 judges. Okay. Rebbe Omer b'chamisha. Rebbe actually says with 5 judges. Interesting. Meaning our Mishnah said din mominus b'shlosha. Rebbe disagrees. Rebbe says din mominus is with 5. Kedei sheyigomer adin b'shlosha, so that the din will be completed with 3. But why can't you just have 3 judges, and then you can have 2 against 1? Why do you need like 3 against 2? This is what Rebbe is saying. No, because the requirement of 3 judges, according to Rebbe, is that the Gemar din should have 3 judges. So meaning if you have 5 judges, so then you can have, if it's a sort of a minimum, a majority of 3 against 2, so you would have that Gemar din of 3. Okay, which means that according to Rebbe, when we're talking about 3 judges, it's 3 judges, not total judges, but after we kind of divide, split it up, and you have 3 against 2, so then you would have 3 in the final sort of breakdown. Megadif for Rabbi Bo says this no way, no how. Well, if that's the case, that we're talking about numbers in the Gemar Din, well then a Sanhedrin Gedola, which has 71 judges, should really have to have 141 judges, so that the majority would be 71. Right? So 71 is not the total number of judges, but in the majority. And a Sanhedrin Ketana should have to be 45, so that when everything is divided up, you would have 23 against 22. No, rather, when the Torah says, gather me 70 judges, that is 70 total, 70 milichatchila, not 141. So also 23 is at the time of judgment, not in the final breakdown. So here also, when we're talking about 3 judges, we're talking about 3 judges when they sit down to judge, not in the final breakdown of the verdict. Okay, well if that's the case, then why does Rebbe say 5? This is important because this is going to be the segue into tomorrow's daf. I was debating if I should do this on today's daf or wait for tomorrow. I think it makes sense to do today, but do keep in mind that this is going to be the segue, the entry into tomorrow's daf, about Yeshem the Mikra versus Yeshem the Masoris. Right? There's a machlokas that we've seen before about Yeshem the Mikra. Is what's important how a word is read, or Yeshem the Masoris, is it important how a word is written? Rebbe says Yeshem the Mikra, whereas the Rabbanan say Yeshem the Masoris. At the time of the Rebbe, this is the reason for Rebbe, Asher Yarshiun Elohim, the pasuk of Asher Yarshiun, that they will make guilty says Asher Yashi'un Elohim. Trey. Yashi'un is plural. So Yashi'un Elohim is 2. And then Nemar Elohim Lamata, right? So it says Asher Yashi'un Elohim. That's the third mention of Elohim. V'nemar Elohim Lamala. And earlier in that same pasuk, it mentioned Ada Elohim Yavod Vashneim. Malamata Shnaim, so just like Yashi'un Elohim is 2 judges, Aflamala Shnaim also Ada Elohim Yavod Vashneim is also 2 judges, so that's 4. Vein Bezdin Shakol, you can have Bezdin Shakol Mosifon Lein Od Echad, so you add another one, that's 5. Harikan Chamisha. For Rabban Yashi'on Ksiv. Whereas the Rabbanan say Yeshem L'Masoris. What's important is how it's written, and it's written without a vav. So Yashi'on, which we want to say is singular, and therefore both instances of Elohim is singular, so 1 and 1 is 2, and Ein Beis and Shakal is 3. So that's Machlokes between Rebbe and the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan say 3, Rebbe says 5. Rebbe says Yeshem L'Mikra, the Rabbanan say Yeshem L'Masoris. And with this, we're going to pick up tomorrow. We're going to have basically tomorrow's entire daf is going to discuss this concept of Yeshem L'Mikra versus Yeshem L'Masoris. Cheved, this was a very interesting daf. This was daf Gimel, daf 3 of Masechta Sanhedrin. We discussed how come we have Nezek, Chatzi Nezek, Kefel, Abava Chamisha, and then we got into the source for 3 judges, Machlekes Rabbi Yosha and Rabbi Yonasan. Rabbi Yosha said because it says Elohim 3 times. Rabbi Yonasan says, we can't use the first one, we can only use the second 2, and then because of Ein Bezdin Shakol, you need a Bezdin Noteh, so therefore we add a third one. Then we said, wait, well then, where does Rabbi Yosha, where does he learn about Lintos Acharab Lahatos? He says, Dafka Badin and Nefashos. And then we saw this machlokas between Rebbe and the Chachamim. The Chachamim say that Dinim Omnis is Bishlosha. Rebbe has an interesting opinion that Dinim Omnis is Taka B'Chamisha. Peace out.